to get started in a minute or two. In the meantime, we would love to have you introduce yourself in the chat. You feel free to share who you are and where you're from, and we'll get started in a moment. I see we have some meetup organizers in the audience, which is really exciting. I'm super excited to get to know some folks through the chat today. Please feel free to share where you're located, how do you use Scratch, and what is your experience with ScratchEd Meetups? And we'll get started in about a minute. We have some friends from Quebec. We have friends from Maine, all over the world, South Africa, New York City. I'm so excited to connect with you all today. While folks are introducing themselves in the chat, Ingrid and I are going to introduce ourselves on the screen up here. So my name is Laura, and I'm a computer science teacher here in the Boston area, and I help Ingrid with the Boston area ScratchEd Meetups. Ingrid?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ingrid Gustafson. I'm an instructional technology specialist currently in the Cambridge Public Schools, and I'm one of the co-organizers of the Boston area ScratchEd Meetups.
And while you're introducing yourself in the chat, one quick note is that you will have the option to choose live translation in Spanish, Portuguese, or English. You just select that language by hovering over the upper left-hand corner of the swap card video feed. We also have the link to the slides today, which you can access in swap card or by using the bit.ly that you see on your screen, which is bit.ly/ScratchEdMeetups. All right, we're going to get started, but if you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, feel free to keep sharing who you are, how you use Scratch, and where you're located. Again, the reminder about interpretation, you can see that at the top of your swap card screen. So today, we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about ScratchEd Meetups. First, we'll share about what is a meetup itself. Then we will share information about how you could get involved in a ScratchEd Meetup or even host a ScratchEd Meetup. And then we'll hear from 3 current ScratchEd Meetup organizers in a Q&A format. So let's get started. And Ingrid's going to share a little bit about what is a ScratchEd Meetup.
All right, so ScratchEd Meetups are peer-designed professional learning experiences inspired by the unconference model like ed camps, if you've ever been to an ed camp professional development experience. At a ScratchEd Meetup, rather than having a predefined schedule with stations and presentations, instead participants decide in the moment what they want to spend their time learning. The type of learning that happens at a meetup is not only about what you take away, which might include a lesson plan or a new colleague connection, but it's also about the atmosphere and the conversations that you experience while you are there. ScratchEd Meetups are designed to be immerse educators in a creative and open-ended learning experience in order to better prepare educators to explore this type of learning in their own learning environments and with their own students. Like Scratch itself, ScratchEd Meetups revolve around fostering community, playful learning, and reflective practice. To support these types of commitments, meetups are typically broken up into 3 parts that you can see on the screen. We have networking and scheduling, then we have exploring and learning, and then we have sharing and reflecting to wrap up the whole experience. Networking and scheduling is the first portion of a ScratchEd Meetup event. With the networking, hopefully there's food, depending on what current COVID regulations will allow, or also what your budget or what your space is like, where participants can get to know one another, catch up, share some snacks, build community, and get familiar with the space. Next, we build the day's schedule. Usually involves a lot of Post-it notes because we want to get everybody's ideas about what they would like to do that day. During schedule building, participants take sticky notes, jot down a topic related to a discussion topic that they would like to learn about for that day. And then after participants share their sticky notes, it's pasted to a wall, stuck up on a wall, where participant organizers will sort them out into breakout sessions, usually by some categories that emerge after looking at all of the session ideas from the participants. Next is exploring and learning. This is really the heart of the meetup. Once the schedule is built and we've gone over the learning options for the meetup, the breakout sessions begin. We encourage the rule of 2 feet, which is why we have a picture of feet there, meaning participants are free to switch between sessions, therefore taking ownership of the learning process. I know we've all been in sessions where maybe we're sitting there and we're like, this isn't exactly what I was hoping for, or it's different than I expected. And we encourage you to get up and find something that does work for you. Breakout sessions have 2 consistent suggested roles, a facilitator and a note taker. The facilitator is usually a volunteer selected moments before the session starts, and they're there to help guide the conversation. A note taker helps document the experience, both for those people who are there and also other participants of the meetup who are not directly in that session to look at later. Breakout sessions last anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time is in the overall meetup. At each meetup, there can be anywhere from 2 to maybe even 10 breakout sessions. Finally, we try to save some time at the end of every meetup to have a whole share, and a reflection as a group. Participants come back together with the whole group to share about their experiences in the meetups. And they can share something from their teaching practice, their educator practice related to Scratch. After spending time reflecting on the experiences from the day, there's usually a brief reflection protocol. My Scratch meetup experience started by attending small meetups at MIT, and later I became one of the Boston ScratchEd Meetup organizers. It's been incredible to watch it grow to a network with over 4,200 members in 44 groups across 11 countries. The ScratchEd Meetup Network is a collective of educators and who are passionate about building community and sharing their creative practices around teaching with Scratch. And over the last 2 years, due to COVID-19 restrictions and on in-person gatherings, many of the meetups have moved to virtual experiences. Organizers have been collaborating with other co-hosts to do joint meetups or even their own smaller local virtual meetups. But it follows a similar structure to our in-person ScratchEd meetups. Using tools like Zoom, Poll Everywhere, and Padlet, amazing volunteer organizers have designed beautiful online ScratchEd meetup experiences that have been open to everyone.
Thank you, Ingrid. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about ScratchEd meetups, you might be wondering how to get involved. You're going to find all of the information that I share at the Meetups website, which is meetups.gsc.harvard.edu. When you navigate to that web page, you'll see this first. This is the homepage, and you'll see a little video which features some of the folks that you'll see here in our session today. You can click on Learn to get more information about what happens at a ScratchEd meetup. And the Participate tab will tell you if there's already a meetup in your area. If there is one, you can click on the group and see upcoming events and become a member. Keep in mind that many meetups pause during the summer, so you might not see a lot of events right now, but check back in the fall to find a bunch of upcoming events. If there's not a meetup in your area, you can contact JC from the Scratch team to discuss starting a new group. And I've seen a few questions in the chat already, so I'm really excited about this. If you have questions about starting up your own meetup group, you can email meetups@scratch.mit.edu. I'll leave that up for a second just so everyone can write it down if you need to. Okay, next we're going to share some of the supports for organizers. So people who want to get their meetup started or are currently already hosting a meetup, and how to sustain that meetup over time. So first, the team sets up a web page for each new ScratchEd meetup on meetup.com using the professional subscription, which gives the organizers ownership of the page and allows them to start creating and promoting events. There's also a group messaging channel on Slack just for meetups organizers to share ideas, suggestions, and build community with one another. Organizers also receive a digital resource kit that includes templates for promotional materials like posters and Twitter images, along with materials that can be used at the meetup, such as slide decks, printable name tags, things like that. There are also resources for hosting virtual meetups if that's something people are interested in as well. Again, you'll find all of that information in terms of participating or organizing a ScratchEd meetup at the website. Okay, I'm really excited because today we have time for a Q&A with 3 of our current meetup organizers. So right now we're going to bring up 3 of our fantastic ScratchEd meetup organizers to the screen. And after they introduce themselves, we'll have some questions for them. If you have questions for the panelists, you can share them in the chat. We will be doing our best to monitor the chat. Please forgive us as there are lots of chat messages coming through. So right now I'd love to bring in Andres, Bradley, and Chris, if you would like to turn your cameras on. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that we can see their beautiful faces a little bigger. And Ingrid, you're welcome to join us back as well. Hello, hello. Okay, so first, let's start with introductions. Our wonderful friend Andres knows 4 languages, and he is doing his best in English today. So he's going to go ahead and introduce himself first. So go ahead, Andres, you can introduce yourself.
Thanks. Yes. My name is Andres Garcia, and since I was young, I was curious about electronics. And when I had my first computer, a Sinclair ZX81, also about programming and robotics too. I am computer science primary school teacher in Barcelona, and it was a long time ago that I discovered Scratch 1.2. And I think that Scratch is a language of expression that integrates many other disciplines and very suitable for children.
Thank you, Andres. And let's go to Bradley, who hosts the Houston, Texas meetup.
Hello, I'm Bradley Quentin. I am one of the organizers of the Houston ScratchEd Meetup, which we started back in like 2019, just before COVID started. So I teach a class called STEM Lab, pre-kindergarten through 5th grade here in Houston. I started teaching with Scratch almost 10 years ago, and yeah, I just think it's the best. And meetups are a great way to find people in your area or around the world who are similarly interested in teaching with Scratch.
Awesome. And lastly, Chris, who's the host of the Quebec meetups in Canada.
Yes. Hi there. My name's Chris Colley. I work for a nonprofit in Quebec called Learn. and we service the Anglo community here in Quebec, educator-wise. I think around 9% of our population is Anglophone. So we started up this meetup at the last Scratch conference, and it's been going strong ever since. Every year we're getting more and more people, and it's just a great way to connect with people over distance. COVID definitely mixed that up a little bit, but we went from doing day-long ones to Friday ones for an hour, hour and a half. And we found it was pretty cool, that whole transformation. So thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Thanks, everyone. So we talked a little bit about this in our introductions, but I'm wondering if anybody has any more that they'd like to add about how long you've been involved with meetups and how you first learned about the meetups and got started with hosting your own in your area.
Well, my first contact with the social Scratch was on our Twitter. We serve jobs and resources around Scratch Catalan, but it was in 2018 that we did the first of the monthly Scratch meetings, and I found it very enriching. The following year, I have the opportunity to participate as organizer, and I can say I am the only member of the Scratch Barcelona community who has not missed any of the 53 meetings we have had.
That's incredible. I don't know. We have to look and see if I don't even know off the top of my head how many meetings we've had in Boston, but that sounds incredible. Anybody else have anything they want to add about how they first got started?
Sure, I'll go. I first learned about ScratchEd Meetups at the 2018 Scratch conference that they had at MIT. You know, talked to some of the people who were already involved in that and wanted to get one set up and going in Houston, and it took us a while to get ourselves together, but we had our first meetup in, I think it was November of 2019, maybe. Then we had another in-person in like January, February, but then COVID, and we switched to doing online virtual meetups, and we tag teamed once with like Chris and Alexis, who I think is in the chat there. And that was, you know, not quite the same as an in-person, but it was, you know, really good to be able to connect over that distance and see how people in other parts of the world were also using Scratch.
Chris, do you have anything?
Well, we did do some collaborations earlier on, but as the meetup progresses and the more that you do, you start just gathering people from all around the world that just start coming to your meetups. So the online part was really awesome. You don't go as deep as when you're in face-to-face, right? Because you're spending a whole day rather than an hour and a half. But the community connections that are made, and just kind of feeling not alone out there during the COVID time, and having Scratch to rally around and create projects with each other and help each other out, because oftentimes we were the only place where people could get help with if they were having problems with Scratch, you know, or hitting walls or having trouble with managing it with the class, etc. So it became a real place for us to kind of just share and commiserate a little bit and problem solve. So, I mean, looking at the face-to-face to the online, they have their kind of own intention, but both are equally powerful when you're delivering them.
Thanks, everybody. So, Chris, you talked a little bit about it, the difference between, you know, having a community that's local versus global. And so for our next question, I'm wondering if each of you can speak a little bit about what it's like to use Scratch in schools in your area.
Well, why don't I'll jump on this one first.
Great.
Well, it's always a struggle to get hesitant teachers to jump in. But if with a meetup, you're providing that support and that it's okay. You know, it's okay to not know it all. And I think through the meetups, we've been able to push that you're going to come in, like we love the idea of, you know, the high ceilings and wide walls, and you're coming in at a very low floor, right? And that's acceptable. And whatever your experience is, and it doesn't matter, because we're going to support that and slowly grow that, make the ceilings a little bit higher as we go through. And teachers really felt more comfortable with that face-to-face support, even if it was through the screens. It's still, you're there for them and they feel like they're a part of something bigger than just their own school, their own class, their own kids. So that support kind of makes them feel more willing to go and take a chance in the classrooms. And once we've shared ideas, how you get started, what are some starter projects, all of the, you know, rubrics, that all the things teachers want to know about, they start to, the anxiety lowers, and then more and more are willing to take that risk in class with their kids. And I mean, the kids are just gung-ho all the time, right? You throw it in front of them, like, okay, cool, let's do something. It's really getting over that hump of the teachers kind of not feeling secure with it, but the network that the Scratch Meetup creates gives that security.
Bradley, how about for you? What's it like to use Scratch in schools in your area?
It's kind of spotty. There's no, I don't know that there's any place where it's like widespread. It's more like if there is a teacher at a school who wants to use Scratch, then it happens there. Like at my school, it started just because I discovered Hour of Code from code.org, like way back. And then I went to one of their trainings, and from there somebody introduced me to Scratch, and I started using it with my third graders because I was just a regular classroom teacher at the time. So it's like if somebody discovers it and gets really interested, then it can happen. But I don't know that there's not a lot of like, oh, our school does Scratch. But I really wanted to jump on one of the things Chris said, was that making the teachers comfortable with not knowing everything, with being like, I don't know, like being able to say to your students, I don't know, let's figure it out together, or let me show you how we're going to figure that out. And I know for teachers, it's a really hard lesson for some of the, I mean, it was hard for me to be able to say that to kids, because you're used to being, the kids come up to you, especially in elementary. They come up to you and they're just like, what's whatever? And you just expect to be able to tell them. But then when I started using Scratch with my kids, they'd be like, how do I do this thing? I'm like, I don't know. Let's figure it out. But like, once you become comfortable with that, it's freeing. It's a lot of fun to be able to say, like, I don't know, let's sit down and figure it out. And that gives you the chance as the teacher to like model how you figure something out. I don't know. I'm going to go to this resource. I'm going to look here. I'm going to try these things. And this is why I'm trying those things. So, I mean, that's, I think, a great thing about the meetups is, offering that support to teachers so they feel like they're not walking it alone. They can get started, and that there's somebody there that they can reach out to for help, even if it's not at the meetup. They've made a connection. Oh, let me email Chris and see what he has to say about this or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something we've heard a lot at the Boston meetups as well, about it's often one teacher in one school, and coming to the meetups is a chance to find that community of support network of other teachers who are also excited about using this tool in their classrooms. Andres, do you have anything to add about Scratch in your area and how it's being used in schools right now?
Yes, in Catalonia, there is a great interest in digital culture and the integration of the programming and robotics in a school. The government education department promotes a Scratch course and seminars throughout the year. There is still many teachers who are unaware of the potential of a Scratch, even though it is the key tool to get a start in programming in most schools. In most schools. Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm I've been involved with Scratch for a while. I think other people have here too. But there are also lots of teachers who don't know about it. And so I think it's also exciting to welcome new teachers into starting to use Scratch with their students. And there are many students who have same thing. They've heard it through the grapevine, through whatever channels they have with their friends, and they've gotten started with it and been excited about it too. Laura's going to ask a couple more. Go ahead.
No, it's amazing to discover a Scratch to a feature.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's because the possibilities of what you can do with it in the classroom are literally endless. Laura's going to ask a couple more. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, and that brings us to our next question. That was a great segue, Andres. So I'm hoping that maybe we can start with Bradley. Can you share a time that educators were able to support each other during one of your meetups?
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens every time. We did when was that? It was back in, I don't know, March, February, April, something. It's been a little while now. We had a virtual that was just Houston. Like we kept it small, and it was just, I don't know, 10, 11 of us from Houston. But I shared a project that like my kids had been doing with Scratch Junior, which was like digital dioramas where they like created drawings of animals and their habitats, and they photographed it into Scratch Junior, and then they animated it so that it, taught about that animal and its habitat and all its, its life cycle and all that stuff. And somebody who was at the meetup, it's like, oh, we do something similar, like a similar unit. How can we use Scratch Junior that way to do something similar? And it became this whole like brainstorming session because they had their own particular set of, well, we don't have those. We have Chromebooks, and we only see our kids, because like I see my kids every day for a week, and then I know other teachers don't have that schedule. They see their kids like once a week or every 8 days or whatever. So talking through how they could schedule it so it was cohesive and coherent. How can they save the projects and make sure kids can find theirs? And it was kind of a whole little brainstorm planning session about how can we make this idea work for your situation. And even people who hadn't done the project, everybody was chiming in. It's like, oh, you could do this instead, or that's kind of like my schedule, I would do it this way. And and that happens at every meetup where people start talking about like, oh, I like that idea, I think I'd do it this way. Oh, that's a good idea. Maybe next time I'll try it. Next time I do that, I'll add your idea. So it's, that conversation is, like you say, it happens every meetup. There's always something like that where somebody has an idea, and everybody chimes in to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that level of support among teachers who may have the same job title but look very different across their different contexts is really nice. Andres, can you share a time that educators were able to support each other during one of your meetups?
Yes. The spirit of the meeting is very collaborative. All you have to do is post a problem, and lots of contributions will appear. I remember when we were looking for ways to celebrate Sant Jordi. Sant Jordi is the book day in Catalonia, and thousands of proposals appeared. Stories, games, resource, or an idea is how easy is to collaborate. How easy is to collaboratively translate materials in Catalan. Scratch to translate in Catalan. It's very easy when some works.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. We've been talking so much about translation today. And then Chris, can you share a time that educators have supported each other during your meetup?
Sure. I mean, I'll echo what my other two colleagues have said already. It happens all the time. I mean, it's a just in time instead of just in case kind of support that takes place. And we have members that are in isolated areas, because we have quite a large province and we span over a lot of Canada as well. And sometimes we're only line of defense, I say defense, but only a line of support for solving some of these problems that they encounter. And at our last meetup, we were just, saying our goodbyes, and one of our members who's in Ontario had mentioned that like she couldn't live with this group anymore because she helped students get projects going in Scratch, but she often is the only one that might of her peers are at the meetup. So she was echoing that, and we felt it's validating, for sure. And it's not one person that always has all the answers. It's a collaborative kind of, oh yeah, I run into that problem too. And oh, I remember he had an answer for that. Let's talk, So those kinds of things just start to happen naturally. And the hunger for them to come, the anticipation, because people have all these questions that they kind of keep in their back pocket until the meetup so that they can get some support around them. And they always leave thinking, hey, I have a solution now. So I love that aspect of it, that we're all kind of super Scratch problem solvers. And, some are at different levels. Some are more in a Scratch Junior than Scratch, but in the end, everybody's able to keep that journey going.
Yeah, I love that about people bringing, saving up all of their questions and bringing to the meetups. I used to keep a running list of topics that I wanted to discuss at the next meetup, because it's sometimes the only place where you have a group of people who all have, interest and expertise in talking about those things. That's great. Thank you all for sharing that. So my next question, and I'll start with Andres, is what has being a meetup organizer meant to you? Oh, and you're muted, Andres.
Sorry. I like to define the meetup as a meal in which the organizers prepare the table and the guests bring food to share. The generosity of sharing makes it always a success. Preparing the meetups has allowed me to have contact with great education professionals interested in Scratch. In the different meetups, I have had the opportunity to meet them, carry out projects together, learn, and above all, create a network of work, knowledge, and friendship.
That's beautiful. I don't know who wants to follow that, but I'll pass it off to Bradley.
Okay. Being the meetup organizer is like, selfishly, it's been great just because I get to, meet other people, because like in my district, which is very large, like 7th or 8th largest in the entire United States, but there are perhaps a handful of people who do something even similar to what I do, like very few. And there's no district-wide, initiative that brings those people together. So we find each other by accident, or you stumble across them at some other training. Oh, I use Scratch too. But it's been, being able to like kind of deliberately go looking for other people, and not just within the district, but in the greater Houston area, being able to find people who are doing similar things or who are interested, and being there as a support to get people interested in adding Scratch. Like, I was lucky when I discovered Scratch. I had a principal who was like, sure, do it. I didn't have to ask for permission, really. She's like, oh, that's just really cool, keep going. And I know that not everybody has that same freedom from their administration to do that kind of thing, but if they get interested and they feel supported, they might be able to go and say like, no, look at all these things, look how great this would be for our students. So being able to like meet those people and then be supportive and be there to help there be more Scratch and Scratch Junior in classrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, what has being a ScratchEd Meetup organizer meant to you?
Well, it's a tale of two stories here, I think. I found the face-to-face meetups. I'm in the business of relationship building. That's what I do as my job. And I found that the face-to-face were much more of a planning exercise. I found once we went online, it started to become automatic, the preparation for it. I didn't know what was going to happen at the meetups, but the prep for it was not as much. Because you're doing an hour and a half instead of a whole day. So it depends. And I don't know if I can say one is better than the other, but I really love the fact of meeting people and the interaction we have together when we were doing a face-to-face. We had lots of rich exchanges, and then they would grow on, right? So we'd have a meetup, and then I would be asked to go and see a teacher in his or her class and work with his or her students on Scratch. Again, it's a part of that networking and that support that we wanted to create in the community. When we flipped online after COVID started up, the relationships were still there, but they tend to get deeper because you see these people much more often than just a one-time meetup where you'll have a variety of different people. The online meetups, you tend to get, your core group is always there. And I'll say our core group is like, 10 to 15 people always would come, always had something to give, always had something to share. So, but again, going through the online process over these last few years, I kind of missed the face-to-face and introducing to people that might not come to a meetup online, but would definitely take a day to go and explore. So again, it's the depth, kind of how deep can you go on a meetup on Zoom, and how much can you go in depth on in a face-to-face. Either one's amazing. I do recommend meetups. I mean, every community should have one. And even if you're not talking about Scratch, you're talking about other things, it's still a great way to bring your community in together and share about things that you're passionate about and that you want to learn more about. So I love it. I mean, I always love it. I have a great team though. I'll tell you that. I have, my what do they call them in the meetups? I forget. People.
Co-organizers, yeah.
Organizers.
That's it. Co-organizers. So I do recommend that you don't go in it alone. Having other support is really important as well, so that you don't feel like it's all on your shoulders, and it comes more of like a collaborative organizing team as well. So you're emulating what you're doing during the meetups in the organizing committee as well, which works well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you speak really beautifully about the sort of differences that arose with the virtual meetups. It was not something that I think any of us had ever considered before the pandemic, but they sort of took on a life or a mind of their own. And it's been really neat to see how virtual meetups complement. But I think what you're saying is that they don't necessarily replace that in-person experience. I think both of them have been really special. And we've sort of found the benefits of each one of those types of meetups through the last few years. I'm going to pass it off to Ingrid for our final question. And then if audience members have questions, you can start putting them in the chat, and I will take a couple down to give to our participants.
Yeah, I'm feeling inspired to share a little bit about what I've gotten out of meetups too. I've been co-organizing for a while, and I think each of you talked a little bit about this too, but what's been interesting for me before we jump into this next question is just experiencing the meetup type of professional development, and then also leading that type of professional development. I think I've told Laura and other people who have attended the Boston ones before that I have a hard time sitting in other PDs now where I'm just like, oh, what are we doing? Because it's so participatory, it's so engaging, and it's opened up my world to how adults should be learning and sharing with each other. And so that's the takeaways. I think I've grown as a professional development facilitator just by attending and later facilitating the meetups. So we do have one last question here that we've planned. Hopefully we have some more from our audience. Going into a new school year, what are some of your hopes for meetups for the upcoming year? And it could be, you know, it's a wide open question. Anybody want to get us started?
I'll go first.
Thanks, go ahead.
I mean, my big hope for the coming school year, when, I don't know, I hesitate to say things are going back to normal, but with the possibility of being able to be back in person for, you know, meetups, you know, I'm really hoping to be able to really encourage people who are not, because most of the people who come to our meetups and most of the people around who teach with Scratch or Scratch Junior, they're like specialist teachers. They're part of like an ancillary schedule or an enrichment schedule. They're not like regular classroom teachers. And one of my main hopes is to be able to get more regular core subject classroom teachers to see the benefits of, you know, making time to get Scratch or Scratch Junior, depending on the age of their kids, you know, encouraging them to, you know, helping them see the benefit of really making the time to make that happen. You know, I did that because I had the freedom and was interested myself. It's like, oh, I think the kids would love this. Let's do it. But I know not everybody sees a thing and it's just like, I'm going to throw that in my classroom next and see what happens. But, you know, I think even when I was teaching just regular old third grade, I think it really, you know, helped my students Scratch and gave them, you know, another avenue to create, to share what they had learned, to show what they could do with the core subject content they had learned. And I really want to, you know, try to build the community to not just like, oh, that's nice, it's the ancillary teachers who are doing all this, or it's our specialist teachers, and to get more regular core subject teachers to see those connections between ELA and math and computer science and coding, and you know, help them make those connections so that they are encouraged to make time for it.
Yeah, I know in a lot of experiences in my area, it's a lot of push-pull tension between curriculum that we would like to see in the classroom and where there's some wiggle room. So finding those connections and making it seen as another tool to make thinking visible, right, is key too. Chris, do you have anything to share about your hopes for next year for meetups in your area?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Well,
big plans.
We've been kind of brainstorming a little bit. We are excited to do a few more face-to-face. We're hoping, again, as Bradley mentioned, that we can do that. We find that's valuable. And one of the things that we found most valuable, and it kind of piggybacks a little bit on what Bradley was saying, is that to get the teachers' feet wet by making them do stuff. So we took on this practice that MIT does called Demo or Die, right? And we take the whole afternoon when we were face-to-face, and that's what the teachers had to do. They had to start planning a lesson that they were going to bring into their classrooms. And then we're thinking that the meetups will supplement that face-to-face, so that teachers, once they get rolling, if they have questions or issues, or I'm trying to figure out how to manage this, or how do I start a classroom, etc., what's a studio about, etc., that they have the meetup that we do virtually as that resource to come and continue the networking process. We don't want people to be passive with it. So if they come to our training, they have to leave with an idea or a project that they present at the end of the day. And then the reflection happens as we're looking at those projects that they've created. So the first half, we tend to do introduction, get your feet wet, look at curriculum connections. Here's some evaluation things that you can look at. Conversations happen around that. But all of that preface that in the afternoon, you're going to attach your content to a project that you're going to bring into your classroom. And we think that if we couple that with the online meetups as well, that we might be able to have more success across the network in enabling teachers to feel like, hey, I can do Scratch. Even if I don't know much about it, I have the ideas, I know what content I have to cover. They create the purpose, the kids create the projects.
Nice. That's a great idea. So you're saying, I think you've said this before, but when you run your meetups, is it typically like 9 to 3 when you do them, when you've done them in person, or what's your structure for your day?
Usually, it's about 9 to 3. We'll do the morning where it's much more discovery, where the teachers can kind of be on their own, look at the resources that we brought. If they haven't made an account, sign up, try maybe a 10 blocks or about me project. And then as they're doing it, I want you to think about your curriculum. I want you to think about what you're covering in class. And like I said, I have an amazing team, so we can go and support them face to face with, oh, here's a cool project that you want to look at for, temperature gauges or whatever it might be. And then they go and try it, and then the meetup online is where they can go and get the support they might need.
Awesome.
We
Yeah.
dabbled with that a little bit, but we want to make sure that it's more systematic in the coming years, so that there's a flow to it where it's not one time with PD. I think Laura was mentioning, we're going to a workshop where you sit there for a day and you leave with absolutely zero. We want to prevent that. And we wanted them to also know that this is not the end, this is the beginning of what our work together. And we found that the meetups are a great conduit for that.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that a lot too. Sometimes at the Boston meetups, unless it's forced, sometimes teachers could leave without creating a Scratch account or without creating their own code. And I think that hands-on, like getting your feet wet, is really important. And I think that's a big plus for what ScratchEd Meetups time is for. It's that time to like click and like confirm the email and make sure you have your passwords all set, like just that time, unrushed, unstructured, to get that nitty-gritty stuff out of the way. Andres, how about you? What are your hopes for meetups? You're going to get 54, meetup number 54, meetup number 55 next school year?
For the next year, I would like to be able to reach all those teachers who think that programming is not for them. That is very difficult, or that programming is not for them, or that is very difficult, or that is just for playing, or that and that they can experience the power of a Scratch and his community of enthusiastic teachers in a meetup. Yes.
Fantastic. I think Laura's, oh, go ahead.
I hope this.
I think it's great that we all have hopes, right? And we'll try our best to bring them to life in the next school year. I think Laura's been looking at some questions from our participants, so she will lead us through those and we'll do a reflection, hopefully, if we have time.
So a couple quick questions that I'm going to answer first from the chat that are more logistical. One person is asking about how to find co-organizers, and feel free to jump in if you want to, my panelists. Finding people from your own school, finding people who maybe don't even know anything about Scratch, but are willing to help you organize an event is totally a great place to start. In Boston, we have a handful of people from the same school district, and then other people started attending, and sort of the people who were the ones organizing it sort of switched over. But there are definitely a lot of ways to find co-organizers. You can also email JC, and I'll put her email back in the chat because she may be able to connect you with someone who has also emailed her from that same region. So that was a quick question about co-organizers, but the question I wanted to ask the group is about recruitment. This is coming from the chat. How do you invite people to your meetups? And are there any efforts to achieve diversity within the participants who are coming, diversity of what they teach, diversity of their backgrounds? So how do you invite people to your meetups? And you don't all have to answer, but whoever has an answer can jump in. Go ahead, Bradley.
I'll go ahead and jump in on that. I use Twitter for that a lot. I will direct message. See, it's weird, and I know a lot of school districts have this, where if the school district doesn't have some sort of like official relationship with whatever, like say Scratch, they can't like officially promote a thing. So pushing it out to the like towards the different departments, like through their Twitter. So they can't like officially, as part of Houston Independent School District, promote it, but that person knows about it, and then they will push it out kind of informally, like, oh, somebody may, I know somebody who would be interested in that. So there's a lot of word of mouth. So that's our main one through is the word of mouth and using Twitter and social media type stuff. Messages to schools and, with the people who I have met before, hey, direct message them like through Meetup, can you share this with the people at your school? And, bring a friend. I saw Alexis mention that in the chat was, bring a person who doesn't know anything about coding but teaches at your school to the Meetup. Just, drag them over and let them see how it might be good for them and their students. With some messages kind of like that, like, hey, bring somebody from your school who doesn't know anything about this but might be willing to learn and, make connections.
Yeah, absolutely. I think using those individual connections is a really great place to start. Chris or Andres, did you want to add anything to how you recruit or invite people to your meetups?
Well, I tend to target school consultants or board. I mean, we have boards up here in Canada, not districts. So if I can target those consultants that work directly with teachers and show them the benefits of it, we tend to pick up. Another thing we've done too is we've done a meetup for school board, right? So only the people from that board, we have a connection at the school board that invites everyone, gets us a space and all of that. And then we come in with the meetup machine to facilitate a day. And that works super well. So getting good allies and partners. And similar to like Bradley and I, for example, when we did our meetup, we both signed up. We were on Discord together and we were like, hey, why don't we team up and try something, right? And we had Alexi that joined in as well. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. Social media, obviously, any kind of newsletter that you might send out or a school might send out are always, welcome to, they're always wanting to provide more opportunities for their teachers to learn more and develop themselves. So we've never really had much, but I mean, it's a lot of word of mouth, right? Because first off, people are meet up with you don't want to pull the PowerPoint out and spend half an hour explaining it. You want to just come and experience it. And usually once they experience it once, they kind of are like, hey, this was good. I learned a lot. I'll come back.
Andres, did you want to add anything? It's okay if you.
We use the Twitter and the Meetup platform to publicize the meetups. Is a good tool.
Yeah, the Barcelona Twitter is very fun to follow. Maybe you can put your ScratchEd Meetup account in the chat at some point because they're a good follow. All right, well, it is almost 3:15, so I think we're going to close out with a reflection. I'm going to reshare my screen and Ingrid is going to lead us through a brief reflection. Thank you so much to the three panelists. You three have been so helpful and it's just been so lovely to chat with you. We are going to go into our reflection. Just a brief note, if any of your questions in the chat did not get answered, please feel free to email JC at meetups@scratch.mit.edu. So if any questions came up that haven't been answered by many of our amazing folks in the chat, feel free to email JC. All right, Ingrid.
So a reflection that we always try to squeeze in at the end, just to have everybody think a few minutes about what they've learned. So what's one hope you have for your own professional learning? So if you want to, you can share it in the chat and we'll go ahead and get a chance to see what everybody's thinking about their own professional learning. in the immediate future, maybe in the year-long goal. It could be as small or large as you'd like. Laura, do you have a hope or
Yes,
reflection?
I just shared it in the chat. My
Oh,
hope
awesome.
is to reconnect with folks in the Boston area in person this year. I feel like I've sort of been texting and Slack messaging with people, but I personally am really craving that in-person time again.
Yeah, I think I'm feeling the same as well.
Alexis is hoping to restart the Florida meetups. So folks in South Florida, keep an eye out. Other folks are looking to connect with people in their city. Lots of great reflections happening.
Laura, I think we have the last slide too that has the website and the email on it. Yeah,
Yep.
so we can put that up there.
Great.
So
Thank
if you want to go ahead.
No. Thank you everyone so much for being here today. We will leave this slide up. If you have any more questions, feel free to check out the website or email JC, and we will stick around in the chat for the next few minutes. But it was a pleasure to be with you here at the Scratch Conference today.